Hello everyone, this is Six Path Weeb, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we dive deeper into a story hidden in the shadows of the shinobi world. What if Naruko and Sasuke had a child? And no one knew about it? Part 2. In a world built on secrets, bloodlines, and legacies, some truths are too dangerous to exist in the light. A child born from two powerful destinies. Raised away from prophecy. Hidden from the five nations. And erased from history before history could even remember them. Last time, we uncovered the beginning of this forbidden legacy. Today, the consequences begin. How does a child inherit both the fire of the Uchiha and the unpredictable chakra of the Uzumaki? What happens when power meant to balance the world is forced to survive in silence? And who would go to war to keep this secret buried? Before we begin. Disclaimer. The content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, let's step back into the hidden chapter of the shinobi world. Let's begin. Sasuke opened his eyes slowly. His room was dim, the heavy curtains keeping the early morning light outside. He sat up, the white sheet sliding gently into his lap, and glanced at the digital clock on his nightstand. It was nearly 7. His inner clock always woke him at the same time. He brushed a hand through his dark hair and reached for the picture frame beside the clock. In the photo, he stood smiling next to a girl with bright blue eyes and sunshine blonde hair. Her grin was wide and warm, as if she carried summer in her heart. Naruko. Sasuke traced the edge of the frame with his finger. It had been almost 3 years since he had seen her in person. 3 years since he had heard her cheerful laugh echo down a hallway. 3 years since she had tugged at his sleeve and told him to look at the sky because it was too beautiful to ignore. He had convinced himself that she would be happier far away from him. He had thought he was protecting her. Yet every morning, he secretly hoped for a call. Just one call. It never came. With a quiet sigh, he set the frame back down and prepared for the day. The Uchiha family home was grand and quiet. Sasuke greeted his parents politely before sitting at the long dining table. Mikoto smiled kindly at him, always hopeful that her son would rediscover his joy. Fugaku gave a thoughtful nod. Sasuke ate quickly and left for work, wrapping a thick scarf around his neck as the winter air swirled outside. Snow clouds gathered overhead, soft and gray. Their company building stood tall in the city, its glass windows reflecting the sky. Inside, everything felt orderly and calm. Sasuke nodded to the secretaries and asked for Shikamaru. Nara-san is interviewing a candidate for the personal assistant position, one of them explained. Sasuke gave a short nod and headed for the elevator. He decided to see the interview for himself. When he reached Shikamaru's glass-walled office, he stopped in his tracks. The applicant was sitting with her back to him. Her blonde hair fell in gentle spikes around her shoulders. Even from behind, something about her presence felt familiar, like the first warm day of spring after a long winter. Sasuke's heart skipped. He motioned for Shikamaru to step outside. "What is it, boss?" Shikamaru asked calmly. Without speaking, Sasuke took the application form from his hands. There it was. Naruko Uchiha. Her photo showed her smiling softly at the camera, her blue eyes bright with quiet determination. She looked older, a little more composed, but the spark in her eyes was unmistakable. "It's quite a coincidence," Shikamaru said thoughtfully. "Same name and all." Sasuke barely heard him. Naruko. She had always been brave. After leaving their village to chase her own dreams, she had written to him for a while. Letters filled with stories of new places, new friends, and her wish to make the world a little brighter wherever she went. Over time, the letters had stopped. Not because she was angry, but because she believed she was giving him space. Sasuke swallowed. "I want her," he said firmly. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. "You're certain? I wasn't sure she had all the experience required." "She has more than enough," Sasuke replied quietly. "Trust me." Shikamaru studied him for a moment, then shrugged lightly. "All right. You're the boss." He returned to the room. Sasuke stood outside, his hands steady but his heart racing. Through the glass, he saw Naruko rise from her chair. She turned slightly, and for the first time in years, he saw her face in motion. Her eyes widened. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Naruko smiled. It wasn't the loud, teasing grin from their childhood. It was softer, warmer, like sunlight after snowfall. Shikamaru shook her hand, and Naruko nodded politely. When she stepped out of the room, she stopped in front of Sasuke. "Good morning, Sasuke," she said gently. Her voice was just as he remembered, bright and steady. "It's been a while." "Yes," he answered. "It has." There was so much he wanted to say. So many apologies, so many questions. But Naruko spoke first. "I heard your company was growing," she said. "I thought maybe I could help. I've learned a lot these past few years. I wanted to stand on my own before coming back." She placed her folder against her chest, standing tall. "I'm not here because of the past," she added kindly. "I'm here because I believe in moving forward." Sasuke felt something inside him shift, like ice beginning to melt. "You always did believe in that," he said quietly. Naruko laughed softly. "Of course I do. Every day is a new chance." Snow began to fall outside the tall windows, delicate flakes drifting from the sky. Sasuke looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the same girl from the photo anymore. She was stronger now. Confident. Independent. Still warm, still bright, but shining in her own way. "I'm glad you came," he said. "So am I," Naruko replied. And in that quiet office hallway, as winter turned gentle and white outside, something hopeful began to bloom again, not as it once was, but as something new. A friendship rebuilt. A future unwritten. Naruko had always carried sunshine in her heart. Now, she carried it into his world once more. Sasuke quietly tore Naruko's photograph from the magazine page. He slipped it carefully into his pocket, handed the paper back to his manager, and walked briskly to his room. When he reached his desk, his hands trembled. He sat down slowly and took several steady breaths, trying to calm the flutter in his chest. At last, he pulled the photograph from his pocket and studied it closely. Naruko had grown. Her cheeks were no longer round and childlike. Her golden hair framed her face neatly, giving her a graceful, confident look. She wore a small smile, gentle and polite, but it did not quite reach her bright blue eyes. Sasuke remembered how her eyes used to sparkle like sunlight on water. When she truly smiled, her whole face would glow. Seeing her expression now made him wonder. What had she been doing for the past 3 years? What dreams had she chased? What challenges had helped her grow into the person she was now? He sighed and rested his chin on his folded hands. Whatever had happened, he would ask her himself. Not to hold her back, but to understand her. They had once been close friends, and he hoped perhaps they could be again. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. The door opened, and Shikamaru stepped inside, carrying a small stack of documents. "She's waiting outside," Shikamaru said calmly. "I showed her around and explained her responsibilities." Sasuke nodded. "Thank you. Please send her in." A moment later, there was another, more hesitant knock. "Come in," Sasuke said. The door opened slowly, and Naruko stepped inside. She kept her gaze lowered politely and bowed. "Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'll do my best." "I'm sure you will," Sasuke replied, his voice steady. She looked a little thinner than he remembered, but she stood tall. There was determination in the way she held herself. When she finally looked up and recognized him, her eyes widened in surprise. "Sasuke?" she asked softly. He gave a small nod. "It's been a while." For a moment, neither of them spoke. So many unspoken questions floated in the air between them. Naruko was the first to recover. She straightened her shoulders and smiled politely. "I'm here to work hard. I completed a personal assistance course, so I hope I can be helpful." Sasuke noticed how professional she sounded. She wasn't the carefree child who used to race him up hills and challenge him to silly competitions. She had grown thoughtful, careful. "I'm glad to hear that," he said gently. "Let me show you your workspace." His office was large, with tall windows that overlooked the busy city below. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with neatly arranged books. A comfortable seating area stood near the window. Just outside his private office was a smaller workspace with a desk and 2 chairs for visitors. That would be Naruko's area. "I've been struggling to keep my appointments organized," Sasuke explained. "If you could arrange my schedule and help manage meetings, that would be a great help." Naruko nodded eagerly. "Yes, Uchiha-san. I'll start right away." Her energy, even when calm, still carried a familiar warmth. She sat at her desk and began sorting through files with careful attention. Sasuke returned to his office but left the door open. From where he sat, he could see her working diligently, writing notes, checking calendars, and occasionally pausing to think deeply before making a decision. He realized something important then. Naruko had not returned to his life to be someone he remembered from the past. She had returned as someone new, someone who had grown through her own experiences. And instead of trying to bring back what once was, perhaps the better choice was to learn who she had become. Later that afternoon, Naruko knocked lightly on his open door. "I've reorganized your appointments," she said, holding out a neatly arranged schedule. "You had 3 overlapping meetings tomorrow, but I spoke with the teams and adjusted the times. I hope that's all right." Sasuke reviewed the page and allowed a rare, genuine smile to appear. "It's more than all right," he said. "It's impressive." Her eyes brightened at the praise, this time, the sparkle reaching them fully. "Thank you," she replied. In that simple moment, the room felt lighter. They were no longer children. They were no longer separated by misunderstandings. They were 2 people working side by side, learning about each other again, this time with patience and respect. And as the sun dipped lower beyond the city skyline, Sasuke found himself hopeful. Perhaps this was not about reclaiming the past. Perhaps it was about building something new, friendship, trust, and a future shaped by both of them, step by steady step. Things were not going very smoothly at the company. It had been over a week since Naruko had started working as a secretary for the serious and sharp-eyed Sasuke Uchiha. Naruko tried her very best every day, organizing files neatly, answering calls politely, and smiling brightly at everyone she met. Still, Sasuke often seemed puzzled around her, as if there was something important he wished to understand but could not quite figure out. That afternoon, Naruko sat at one of the long tables in the company dining hall, enjoying her lunch. The meals were provided for all the employees, and everyone gathered together to eat. Though Sasuke could have joined the senior staff at a different table, he chose, once again, to sit across from her. She looked up briefly when she heard the chair move, her bright blue eyes meeting his for a moment before returning to her food. "So," Sasuke began, trying to sound casual, "how do you like it here?" Naruko smiled softly. "Everyone's really kind. They've helped me a lot." "You're not having trouble with your work, are you?" "Sometimes I do," she admitted honestly. "But the other secretaries always guide me. I'll keep improving. I want to be someone you can rely on." Sasuke nodded. "Thank you, Naruko." There was a small pause. Sasuke leaned forward slightly. "Why did you choose to come all the way to Tokyo?" Naruko gently set down her chopsticks. "Uchiha-san," she said politely, "that's a personal matter. I hope you understand." Before Sasuke could reply, her phone rang. The cheerful sound echoed through the dining hall. Naruko quickly answered. "Yes, Kakashi-sensei?" Sasuke's brow furrowed in confusion. Who was this Kakashi? Naruko listened carefully, nodding as she did. "At 11? Yes, I'll be there." A soft pink blush touched her cheeks, and her eyes sparkled. "I'm really grateful for you. See you tonight, Kakashi-sensei." When she ended the call, Sasuke looked unusually tense. He leaned forward. "Did you find someone important to you?" he asked. Naruko blinked in surprise, then smiled warmly. "Yes, I did." Sasuke's heart gave a strange thump. "I found something I truly love," she continued dreamily. "The moment I saw it, I knew my life would change." Sasuke's imagination raced far ahead of her words. Overcome with emotion, he suddenly stood up, accidentally knocking his tray to the floor with a loud clatter. The dining hall fell silent. Naruko looked startled. "Uchiha-san, are you all right?" Embarrassed by his outburst, Sasuke straightened his jacket and quietly left the room. Later that afternoon, Sasuke rubbed his temples in his office. He heard raised voices outside, one calm and gentle, the other firm and determined. When he opened the door, he saw Naruko standing politely in front of Sakura Haruno. "I'm sorry," Naruko was saying kindly, "but Uchiha-san isn't feeling well today. Without an appointment, I can't let anyone in." Sakura folded her arms. "I visit all the time." Before the situation could grow uncomfortable, Sasuke stepped forward. "That's enough." Naruko immediately stepped aside and bowed her head. "I'm sorry, Uchiha-san. I didn't know." "It's fine," Sasuke said. "This is Sakura Haruno. She's a lawyer." Naruko nodded respectfully. Sasuke added gently, "Naruko was only doing her job." Sakura studied them both, then sighed. "Very well. I'll call you later." With that, she left. Silence lingered. Naruko, Sasuke began, there's nothing confusing about my relationship with Sakura. I don't want misunderstandings. Naruko gave a polite nod. Your personal life is your own, Uchiha-san. Her calm answer left Sasuke strangely unsettled. As evening approached, Naruko stood at his office door. Uchiha-san? She asked softly. Yes? I've finished my tasks for today. May I leave? He studied her for a moment before nodding. Of course. Thank you, sir. Good evening. She bowed politely and turned to leave. Just as she reached the hallway, Sasuke called out, Naruko. She turned, her golden hair catching the light. That thing you said you loved. What is it? Her smile grew brighter than ever. It's a children's community arts center, she said happily. Kakashi-sensei runs it. I've always loved drawing and helping kids learn. Tonight, I'm volunteering there for the first time. Sasuke blinked. That's what changed your life? He asked quietly. Yes, she replied. When I saw how happy the children were, I knew I wanted to help. It felt like sunshine inside my heart. For the first time all day, Sasuke truly smiled. I see, he said. That sounds wonderful. Naruko beamed. You should visit someday. As she left the building, Sasuke stood by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in warm colors. He realized that what he had mistaken for distance or secrets was simply Naruko following her own bright dreams. And perhaps, he thought, there was something to learn from her cheerful courage after all. Sasuke waited until Naruko left the office, then quietly picked up his coat and followed after his secretary. He kept a careful distance, sometimes stepping behind lamp posts or pausing near shop windows so she would not notice him. Naruko walked down the busy streets, her golden hair shining even under the cloudy sky. The city buzzed with honking vehicles and hurried footsteps. Everyone seemed to be racing toward something important. After about 10 minutes, Naruko entered a small convenience store. Sasuke leaned against a nearby wall and waited. Soon she came out with a simple cup of ramen and stepped into a coffee shop for a moment, returning with a warm drink. She walked a little farther until the crowd thinned, then sat down quietly at a corner bench near the pavement. Sasuke watched from behind a building. Naruko carefully opened her ramen and began to eat. He felt a small smile tug at his lips. Some things never changed, she still loved her simple meals. But as he watched her wrap her arms around herself against the cold wind, his smile faded. Why was she sitting out here instead of going home? Why was she alone in the chilly evening? When she finished, she threw the empty cup into a bin and walked to the bus stop. She stood there, shivering slightly as she waited. Sasuke clenched his hands in his coat pockets. He wanted to step forward and offer her warmth, but something held him back. He needed to understand. A bus arrived, and Naruko climbed aboard. Sasuke quickly found a taxi and asked the driver to follow the bus ahead. The driver glanced at him curiously but nodded. When Naruko stepped off at her stop, Sasuke paid the driver and hurried out. For a moment, he lost sight of her in the crowd. His heart skipped nervously, until he spotted her golden hair slipping into a brightly lit building. It was a lively music club. Lights blinked in cheerful colors, and music floated out onto the street. Curious and concerned, Sasuke stepped inside. He paused as his eyes adjusted. Then he saw her. Naruko had changed into a neat outfit, black pants, a crisp white shirt, a small bow tie, and a tidy waistcoat. She carried a tray and moved gracefully between tables, taking orders and offering polite smiles. Sasuke blinked. She had a second job? He watched as she patiently listened to customers, writing down their requests. When someone tried to chat too long, she simply gave a kind but professional smile and continued her work. She was calm and capable. Sasuke's thoughts swirled. He believed he paid her well at the office. Why would she need another job? Why was she working so late? Around 10 o'clock, Naruko changed back into her casual clothes and stepped out of the club. Once again, she boarded a bus. Once again, Sasuke followed from a distance. This time, the bus stopped near a large hospital. Naruko hurried inside. Sasuke's confusion deepened. It was nearly 11 at night. What was she doing here? After some time, Naruko emerged from the hospital doors, holding a small child gently in her arms. The child was wrapped in a soft blanket and slept peacefully against her shoulder. Beside her walked a kind-looking doctor with silver hair and gentle eyes. He wore a white coat and spoke to her warmly. They stopped near the entrance. The doctor hailed a taxi, and the two of them spoke quietly. Naruko nodded, her expression both tired and determined. Before she stepped into the taxi, the doctor gave her a soft, respectful pat on the shoulder, a gesture of encouragement, and thanked her. Sasuke stood frozen. The taxi drove away, carrying Naruko and the child into the night. After a long moment, Sasuke gathered his courage and entered the hospital. Inside, he approached the front desk and quietly asked about the child Naruko had been holding. The nurse smiled gently. "Oh," she said, "that's little Hana. She's been receiving treatment for a long time. Naruko volunteers here every night after her second job. She reads stories to the children and helps families who need extra support. Tonight, Hana was finally well enough to go home. Naruko has been helping her grandmother with expenses and paperwork." Sasuke's breath caught. Volunteers. Stories. Support. The nurse continued, "Naruko never tells anyone. She says kindness is brightest when it shines quietly." Sasuke stepped back, his heart feeling both heavy and warm at the same time. All this time, he had misunderstood. Naruko wasn't meeting someone for secret reasons. She wasn't hiding anything unkind. She had simply been helping others. The next evening, Sasuke didn't follow her in secret. Instead, he waited by the hospital entrance with 2 cups of warm tea. When Naruko arrived, surprised to see him, he offered 1 cup with a small, sincere smile. "I thought," he said gently, "maybe you could use some company." Naruko blinked in surprise, then smiled brightly, her smile as warm as sunrise. Together, they walked inside. That night, Sasuke sat beside her as she read a cheerful storybook to the children. The room filled with soft laughter and hope. And Sasuke realized something important: Naruko's strength wasn't loud or flashy. It was steady, kind, and full of light. From that day forward, he no longer followed behind her in the shadows. He walked beside her instead. Naruko opened her heavy eyes when her alarm chimed softly in the quiet room. She blinked a few times, reached for her phone, and gently turned it off. After a small yawn, she rolled onto her side, and her sleepy expression melted into a warm, glowing smile. Curled safely in her arms was her little boy, Koichi. Naruko hugged her 2-year-old son a little closer and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. She studied his peaceful face for a moment. Koichi had pale skin, soft black hair, and round, chubby cheeks that made him look like a tiny moon. His small body rose and fell with each calm breath. Careful not to wake him, Naruko slipped out of bed. The winter air nipped at her skin, and she shivered. Quickly, she tucked the blankets more snugly around Koichi to keep him warm. Then she tiptoed to the corner of the room and switched on the heater so the little apartment would feel cozy by the time he woke. Their home was small but tidy. There was 1 bed they shared, a narrow wardrobe, and a few toys scattered like bright treasures across the floor. A tiny bathroom connected to the bedroom. Naruko slipped inside and took a quick shower, humming softly so Koichi would still hear her voice if he stirred. She always made sure to stay nearby. When she finished, she wrapped herself in a thick towel and pulled on her fluffiest cardigan. Another towel went around her bright golden hair. Feeling warmer, she stepped back into the room. Koichi was still asleep. Naruko opened the window just a crack. The sky was dark blue, and the world outside was quiet and frosty. It was very early, just 5 in the morning. She closed the window quickly and rubbed her hands together. "It might even snow today," she whispered with a hopeful smile. She padded into the next room, which served as both their living room and kitchen. A dark red couch sat beside a low table covered with colorful pencils and picture books. An old television rested against the wall. In the corner was a short counter with a sink and cooker, and beneath it a cupboard filled with dry food. A small fridge hummed gently beside it. Naruko opened the fridge and took out a bright green apple. She washed it carefully and peeled it with steady hands. Though she was still a little cold, she focused on preparing breakfast. She cut the apple into small pieces and placed them in a bowl. From the cupboard, she took a jar of baby biscuits and crumbled a few into the bowl. Using a fork, she mashed everything together. When it looked too dry, she added a splash of milk and stirred until the mixture became smooth and soft. Meanwhile, she boiled some water, letting it cool before pouring it into Koichi's baby bottle. She always made sure everything was clean and just right. With the bowl and bottle ready, Naruko carried them back to the bedroom. As she entered, she saw Koichi sitting up on the bed, rubbing his eyes with tiny fists. "My little sunshine is awake," she said brightly. "Good morning, my love." Koichi lowered his hands. His sky blue eyes, so much like Naruko's, sparkled when he saw her. "Mommy." He cheered. "Yes, "Sweetheart," Naruko replied, setting the bowl and bottle on the nightstand. She scooped him into her arms. Koichi wrapped his small arms around her neck and rested his head on her shoulder. Naruko swayed gently from side to side. "My brave boy. My bright star," she sang softly. After a moment, Koichi wiggled. "Nunu," he murmured in his sleepy voice. Naruko chuckled. She knew exactly what that meant. She wrapped a blanket around them both and held him close, letting him feel safe and comforted. Koichi liked to hold onto her hair when he felt sleepy, and Naruko didn't mind at all. She believed that hugs and closeness were little bits of magic that helped children grow strong and kind. When he was ready, Naruko reached for the bowl and scooped up a small spoonful of apple and biscuit mash. "Here comes the airplane," she said playfully. Koichi opened his mouth wide and giggled between bites. He watched the early birds flutter outside the window while he ate, his eyes wide with wonder. On the nightstand beside them sat a small framed photograph. It showed Naruko standing behind her old friend, Sasuke, both of them smiling under bright summer sunlight. Sometimes the picture made her heart feel heavy, and sometimes it made her feel warm. Life had changed since that photo was taken, but Naruko focused on the good memories and the lessons she had learned. She wanted Koichi to grow up believing in kindness, hope, and new beginnings. So whenever he asked about his father, Naruko would gently explain that he was far away, working hard, and that love could travel across any distance. She believed that filling her son's world with hope would help him build a bright future. When the bowl was empty, Naruko clapped softly. "All done. My Koichi ate all his breakfast." "Kakusai eat," Koichi declared proudly, clapping his tiny hands. Naruko handed him his bottle and kissed the top of his head. Morning light slowly began to fill the room, turning everything golden. Naruko looked around their small apartment and smiled. It wasn't grand or fancy, but it was full of warmth. Full of laughter. Full of love. And to her, that was more than enough. Naruko nodded when Koichi finished his breakfast. It was not every day that her son could eat so easily, and her heart felt warm and light as sunshine. Quickly, Naruko changed Koichi's diaper and smiled at him. "Let's get dressed now, okay?" "Oka." Koichi slid off the bed and ran to the closet, pulling out clothes with great importance, as if he were choosing royal robes. Naruko chuckled softly and searched for her own outfit. She had only one that looked formal enough, a neat black suit, a white shirt, and a black tie. She brushed it carefully with her hand. "Mommy has an interview today, baby." "Oh," Koichi nodded, hugging his most precious toy close to his chest. "Fun come?" "Of course friend can come with you," Naruko said warmly. She had knitted the little doll herself. It had button eyes and a thin stitched smile. The yarn was worn and fuzzy now, but to Koichi, it was perfect. Naruko dressed quickly, then helped Koichi into his tiny clothes. She had sewn most of them herself. Long ago, she had learned to stitch and meant to save money, and now every small sweater and pair of trousers felt like a hug she had made with her own hands. "Okay," she said, clasping her hands together. "Now let's wear our masks." She gently placed a small medical mask over Koichi's face, then one over her own. She slipped soft gloves onto his little hands. In her bag, she packed a water bottle, a baby bottle, an apple, and extra diapers. She wrapped a scarf snugly around his neck and placed a tiny beret on his head so the cool air would not bother him. After tying his shoes and putting on her own, she took his hand. "All right. Let's get going." They stepped out of their small apartment and down the stairs. Koichi liked walking down each step by himself, holding tightly to the railing. Once outside, Naruko picked him up and carried him toward the nearest subway station. Koichi wrapped one arm around her neck and held friend close with the other. When they went underground, his eyes sparkled. "Mommy, choo-choo," he said, pointing at the arriving train. "Yes," Naruko smiled. "The choo-choo is coming to get my son." She waited patiently for everyone to step out before boarding. The train was crowded with people heading to work. Naruko made sure Koichi's mask was still secure. His health was delicate, and she was always careful. "Good morning, Naruko Ne-chan." Naruko turned and smiled at a boy in a high school uniform. "Good morning, Konohamaru." He stood up at once. "Please sit." "Thank you," she said gratefully, sitting down with Koichi in her lap. Every morning, Konohamaru boarded at the first station and saved her a seat. Their friendship lasted only for the length of the train ride, but it was a bright and cheerful part of her day. "What's up, Koichi?" Konohamaru asked. "Kakusai mommy choo-choo," Koichi said proudly. "Mawu quacks?" Konohamaru laughed and pulled out a small pack of crackers from his backpack. He handed them to Koichi. "Ne-chan, you don't have to spend your allowance," Naruko said gently. "It's okay," Konohamaru replied with a grin. Naruko tapped Koichi's tummy lightly. "What do we say?" "Mawu, then you." Koichi puffed out his chest. Naruko giggled. She loved how proud he was when he said, "Thank you" clearly. When their stop arrived, Naruko and Koichi waved goodbye and stepped off. She let Koichi walk for a bit, holding his hand. Soon, she heard him breathing harder than usual. Without hesitation, she scooped him into her arms. "It's okay, Koi," she whispered. "Mommy's got you." A large hospital building soon came into view. It stood tall and bright, with wide windows that reflected the morning sky. Naruko walked inside and headed toward the children's care wing. "Good morning," the receptionist said kindly. "Good morning," Naruko replied. "We're here to see Kakashi-sensei." "Of course. May I have the patient's name?" "Koichi Uchiha." The receptionist smiled warmly. "He's expecting you. We're all cheering for Koichi." "Thank you," Naruko said softly. She knocked on the doctor's door and stepped inside after hearing his voice. At his desk sat Kakashi Hatake, reading a small orange book. He glanced up with a friendly smile. "Naruko," he said. "And hello, Koichi." "Few book," Koichi declared. Naruko placed her hands on her hips playfully. "Sensei, please don't read silly books when my baby's here." Kakashi chuckled. "He knows where the chocolates are." Koichi wiggled free and toddled to the desk, opening a drawer with confidence. Kakashi helped him unwrap a small chocolate square and lifted him onto his lap. Naruko sat down. "I have an interview today," she said. "If I get the job, it will help us so much." Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. "You work very hard, Naruko. Make sure you rest too." She gave a small, brave smile. "I will." Koichi was receiving special treatment to help his body grow stronger. The doctors and nurses were kind and hopeful. Naruko believed in them with all her heart. She knelt in front of Koichi and kissed his cheeks. "Mommy has to go now, okay, my love?" Koichi's eyes grew watery. "Mommy no go." Naruko gently wiped his tears. "Mommy always comes back. And while I'm gone, you'll be brave and show sensei your big smile, right?" Koichi sniffled and nodded. Kakashi spoke softly. "We're going to draw pictures today, Koichi. Maybe one for Mommy's interview?" Koichi brightened a little. "Draw Mommy." Naruko's heart felt full. She hugged him carefully. "That's right. Draw Mommy the strongest smile you can." She stood up, waved one last time, and stepped into the hallway. Her steps were steady, even though her heart felt tender. Outside, the sky seemed wider than before. Naruko took a deep breath. She was strong. She was hopeful. And she would keep walking forward, for herself, and for her little boy who believed that the train was called Choo-Choo and that his mommy could do anything. This was what Naruko disliked the most. She disliked leaving her little son behind and going to work, but she had to. She knelt down and gently held Koichi's tiny hands in hers. "Look, Koichi," she said softly. "Mommy has to go to work. She works so she can buy you warm clothes for winter and maybe even a new toy train. All right?" Koichi nodded with serious little eyes. "Mommy wowk. Mommy buy new toy." "That's right," Naruko smiled, brushing his soft hair away from his forehead. "And Mommy loves Koichi very much." "Kokusai love Mommy," he replied proudly, giving her a small masked kiss. Naruko hugged him tightly, breathing in the familiar, comforting scent of baby soap and sunshine. She stood and looked toward Kakashi Hatake, who gave her an easy nod. "Don't worry," Kakashi said kindly. "I'll take good care of him. He'll even get to visit Iruka Umino later." Naruko nodded, though her heart felt heavy. She waved one last time before stepping outside. This time, she did not hide her tears. They slid quietly down her cheeks as she reminded herself that she was doing this for Koichi. Later that morning, Naruko sat in a bright office at Sharingan Corporations, nervously folding her hands in her lap. Across from her sat Shikamaru Nara, the personal affairs manager. He studied her application carefully. "You don't have experience in this exact field," he said thoughtfully. "No, Nara-san," Naruko admitted, sitting up straighter. "But I learn quickly. I promise I'll work very hard." Shikamaru gave a small smile. "Hard work is troublesome. But impressive. Please wait a moment." Naruko's heart pounded as he stepped out of the room. She needed this job. Hospital bills had piled up, and winter was coming quickly. Koichi's tiny jacket was already too short at the sleeves. After a few long minutes, Shikamaru returned. "You've been accepted," he said calmly. Naruko blinked. "Oh really?" "Yes. Congratulations." A bright smile bloomed across her face like sunrise. "Thank you so much." He handed her a 2-year contract. In her excitement, Naruko read through it quickly, trusting her hopeful heart. She signed where instructed, determined to give her very best. "Welcome to Sharingan Corporations," Shikamaru said. "Let me show you around." For the next hour, Naruko explored the building. The polished floors, tall windows, and neatly arranged desks felt like a new beginning. After working small jobs in crowded shops, this place felt full of possibility. Finally, Shikamaru led her to the top floor. "This will be your workspace," he said. "The CEO is ready to meet you." Naruko took a steadying breath and knocked on the large office door. "Come in." She stepped inside and bowed politely. "Thank you very much for hiring me. I'll do my best." "I'm sure you will." The voice made her freeze. Slowly, she lifted her head. Behind the desk stood Sasuke Uchiha. For a moment, the room felt very quiet. Years had passed since she had seen him. His dark hair fell neatly over his forehead, and his expression was calm and serious. Naruko's heart fluttered with surprise, not anger, not sadness, just the shock of seeing someone from a chapter she thought had closed. She straightened her shoulders. She was no longer the girl who used to chase after dreams without thinking. She was a mother. She was responsible. She was strong. "Uchiha-san," she said politely. "I look forward to working with you." Sasuke studied her carefully. His voice was softer now. "It's been a long time, Naruko." "Yes," she replied evenly. "It has." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. "I believe you signed a contract to be my secretary for 2 years, Sasuke said professionally. "If you're comfortable with that, we can begin today." Naruko nodded. "I am. I gave my word, and I will honor it." He gave a small approving nod. "Good. I need help organizing my schedule. My appointments have become overwhelming." Naruko felt a flicker of confidence. Organization she could handle. "I'll arrange everything carefully. You won't miss a single meeting." "Thank you," Sasuke said sincerely. As she stepped into her new office space, Naruko placed her bag down and sat at the desk. Sunlight streamed through the window, warming the papers in front of her. Her hands no longer shook. She thought of Koichi's proud little voice, "Mommy Wowk." Yes, she would work. She would grow. She would build a future filled with warmth and laughter. Naruko opened the planner and began writing neatly, her golden hair glowing in the afternoon light. This was not the end of an old story. It was the beginning of a new one. And she was ready. Naruko went to her desk and sat down carefully, smoothing the papers in front of her. She took a slow breath to gather her thoughts. Sasuke was only a few steps away in his office, but she would not let that distract her. She needed this job for her little one, and she was determined to do her very best. She told herself that once Sasuke grew used to seeing her every day, he would think of her simply as his secretary. That would make things easier. Naruko carried a big world in her heart, and most of it belonged to her child. Every choice she made was for her baby. She would protect her little sunshine with all the courage she had. With a small nod to herself, she began her work. A week passed, and things settled into a steady rhythm. Naruko organized files, answered calls, and typed reports with growing confidence. She was proud of how much she was learning. Whenever she felt unsure, her fellow secretaries kindly helped her. Their smiles encouraged her to keep going. It was Saturday, and Naruko felt especially happy knowing she would have Sunday off. She looked forward to spending the whole day with her child. She missed her little one whenever they were apart, but she reminded herself that her work helped build a bright future for them both. At lunchtime, she picked up her tray and found a quiet table. She was grateful that the company provided meals. Her mornings began very early. First, she made breakfast for her child, humming cheerful songs while packing a small bag. After that, she dropped her little one at the hospital's nursery, where kind caregivers watched over the children. Only then did she hurry to work. Naruko believed in taking care of herself, too. She drank milk and ate fruit whenever she could, knowing she needed strength and energy to keep up with her busy days. As she was about to take her first bite, someone pulled out the chair across from her. She looked up and saw Sasuke sitting there. "So, how do you like it here?" he asked. Everyone's really nice, Naruko replied politely, focusing on her lunch. You're not having trouble with the work, are you? Sometimes I do, she admitted honestly. But I'm learning quickly. I'll become a great secretary soon. Sasuke nodded. I'm sure you will. After a short pause, he asked, why did you move to Tokyo? Naruko held her fork still. Tokyo was a big, shining city full of opportunity. But her reasons for being there were personal and precious. She offered a gentle smile. That's part of my private life, Uchiha-san, she said kindly. I hope you understand. Before he could respond, her phone rang. Her heart fluttered when she saw Kakashi's name on the screen. She answered right away. Hello, Kakashi-sensei? Relax, Naruko, came his warm voice. Everything is perfectly fine. I just wanted to tell you my shift ends at 11 tonight. I'll be there, she said with relief. There was a soft shuffle, and then a tiny voice filled her ear. Mommy? Koichi loves Mommy. Naruko's eyes sparkled with joy. I love you too, Koichi. Mommy work? Yes, sweetheart. Mommy is working hard. Kakashi chuckled gently in the background. Time for us to head to the nursery. See you tonight. See you, Naruko said, ending the call with a glowing smile. She tucked her phone away and noticed Sasuke watching her thoughtfully. You sounded very happy, he said. I was, Naruko replied softly. I fell in love at first sight. Sasuke blinked in surprise. The moment I saw my child, she continued dreamily, I knew my life had changed forever. Being her mother is the greatest joy I've ever known. Sasuke's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. He leaned back in his chair, quiet for a moment. You care about her very much, he said. With all my heart, Naruko answered. The rest of the day passed peacefully. Later that afternoon, a woman with bright pink hair and sparkling green eyes entered the office. She walked confidently toward Sasuke's door. Naruko stood and offered a polite smile. Welcome. May I help you? I'm here to see Sasuke-kun, the woman said cheerfully. Do you have an appointment? Naruko asked gently. Before the woman could answer, Sasuke stepped out of his office. Sakura, he said. Naruko learned that the visitor was Sakura Haruno, a talented lawyer and an old friend of Sasuke's. They spoke briefly about work and future projects. Sakura noticed Naruko's organized desk and complimented her neat arrangement of files. You're doing a wonderful job, Sakura said warmly. Naruko beamed. Thank you. I'm trying my best. After Sakura left, Sasuke turned to Naruko. You handled that very professionally. Naruko nodded. It's important to respect everyone who walks through the door. Sasuke studied her for a moment, then gave a small, sincere smile. You're stronger than you think, Naruko. She felt a gentle warmth in her chest. Strength did not always mean loud words or grand gestures. Sometimes, it meant waking up early, working hard, and loving someone with your whole heart. Naruko returned to her desk and continued typing, her fingers moving steadily across the keyboard. She was building a future step by step, one filled with kindness, dedication, and hope. And no matter how big Tokyo felt, she knew she was not alone. She had her courage, her dreams, and the brightest little star waiting for her at the end of each day. Uchiha-san? Naruko stood at Sasuke's office door, holding her notebook neatly against her chest. Yes? Sasuke looked up from his computer, adjusting his glasses. I've finished my work for today. May I leave now? She asked politely. Yes, he replied with a small nod. You did well today. Go ahead. Thank you, sir. Good evening. Naruko bowed with a bright, grateful smile. She slipped on her coat and wrapped her scarf snugly around her neck. The air outside was chilly, and tiny clouds of breath floated before her as she walked down the street. Her bag rested on her shoulder, filled with careful notes and a small planner where she kept track of every expense. After 10 minutes, she reached the convenience store she had recently discovered. The warm light inside felt welcoming. She bought a simple cup of ramen and thanked the cashier kindly. Time was important, her next job would begin at 7, and she wanted to be punctual. Next door, she stepped into a small coffee shop and purchased hot water for her meal. Holding the cup carefully, she walked to a quiet corner along the pavement. When she found a peaceful spot, she sat down and began eating. Naruko counted the coins she had spent. Even the smallest amount mattered. She felt proud of herself for keeping such careful track. Now that she had a steady job at the company, She hoped she could speak to the bank and arrange a manageable plan to pay her credit card debt. After that, she dreamed of gradually settling the hospital bills too. "I can do this," she whispered softly to herself. Finished with her dinner, she tossed the empty cup into a bin and headed toward the bus stop. She wrapped her arms around herself to keep warm. When the bus arrived, she stepped aboard and found a seat by the window. The city lights shimmered like stars as she traveled toward her second workplace. When she arrived, she walked into the lively evening cafe where she worked part-time. It was bustling with music and chatter. Naruko quickly changed into her uniform in the staff room and greeted her coworkers with a cheerful smile. She moved gracefully between tables, carrying trays and offering warm greetings. "Good evening. How may I help you?" she would say kindly. Most customers were friendly, and Naruko worked diligently. When someone needed extra napkins or spilled a drink by accident, she calmly fetched a cloth and cleaned the area with care. Even when the work felt tiring, she reminded herself that every hour brought her closer to her goals. By 10 o'clock, her shift ended. She thanked the owner and hurried outside. Her next stop was the hospital, where her little Koichi was waiting. Kakashi and Iruka, two kind doctors, had offered to watch Koichi after their hours. Naruko was deeply grateful for their help. After a bus ride and a short walk through the cool night air, she entered the hospital and headed toward the oncology section. She stopped when she saw Iruka walking toward her, holding Koichi gently in his arms, with Kakashi beside him. "Kakashi-sensei, Iruka-sensei," Naruko greeted them warmly. "Mommy." Koichi reached out happily. Naruko's tiredness melted away as she gathered her baby into her arms. "Oh, my sweet Koichi. I missed you so much," she whispered, holding him close. She placed a gentle kiss on his forehead. Koichi wrapped his tiny arms around her neck and rested his head against her shoulder. "It's time to sleep now, little Koi," she murmured softly. "We're going home." "Thank you so much for looking after her," Naruko said gratefully to the doctors. "It's our pleasure," Iruka replied with a kind smile. Kakashi handed Naruko a small bag. "These are vitamins for you. Please remember to take care of yourself too. You work very hard." Naruko blinked back happy tears. "I don't know how to thank you properly." "You don't have to," Kakashi said gently. "You and Koichi are important to us." Naruko smiled, her heart full. They walked her outside, where Kakashi kindly hailed a taxi. "Sensei, I could take the bus," she began. "It's late and cold," Kakashi said firmly but kindly. "Let us help." She nodded, settling into the taxi with Koichi sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Good night," she called softly. "Good night," they replied. As the taxi drove through the glowing city streets, Naruko leaned back in her seat. She brushed a strand of hair from Koichi's face and kissed her brow gently. Outside, the lights sparkled like tiny lanterns guiding them home. Naruko felt tired, yes, but also hopeful. She was working hard, caring for her child with all her heart, and surrounded by kind people who believed in her. And that, she thought as she held Koichi close, was more precious than anything else in the world. Dear YouTube family, that wraps up this part of the journey. Thank you for watching, supporting, and being a part of this amazing community. There's much more ahead, and I can't wait to share it with you. Stay tuned for what's next. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.